Okay, everybody. So welcome back to this second week. This is the second part of the lecture. This is the technical lecture. And today we're going to talk about the building blocks of how to use R. Okay. But first, I also want to start by talking about a little bit of logistics. And my first kind of impression with the comments in the discussion board is that we need to be more patient. Remember that learning statistics and learning a statistical software, how to use a statistical software, requires a lot of patience. Patience. So please do not feel frustrated with what you are experiencing right now. It's normal to have this steep learning curve learning R because you need to learn how to code, and that's hard. So there's nothing like a canned function that you can find easily. You need to learn how to use different functions, different packages. So be patient. And if you have questions, of course, do not hesitate to ask those questions in the discussion board. Try to do it early in the week. In such a way we can try to respond and maybe the chances to do a good lab increase. But also use Google and YouTube. In Google especially, you're gonna find tons of additional materials to try to answer the problems, especially those technicalities. For instance, if a package is spelled incorrectly, R is not gonna download it. So you need to spell correctly the name of the dataset. That's something that is important to keep in mind. And help each other. I really like the way that some of you guys were able to guide your classmates in practical solutions about these technicalities and these problems. So share that information. I don't think there's any problem with that. Share what works for you in that sense. Okay. And I think that's all for logistics right now. So let's look at this old record of the Census of the United States, 1930. I wonder how people try to use this to estimate any basic statistical analysis. It's kind of crazy, but I like it because to some extent it is very similar to what we're going to learn about tabular data and data sets today. So what are the topics of today? My goal is that at the end of this lecture, you're going to be able to import or load your data, explore your data, clean your data in the most basic sense, which is deal with your missing values or missing information, and identify what is the difference between tidy and untidy data, and also be able to do some basic manipulations with your data, such as subsetting your data or exporting your data. The next lectures, we're going to talk about much more about variables and variables transformation. Variable transformation is crucial for data analysis. Okay, so in summary, what we're going to do today is what many people call like a data carpentry or data pre-processing, which is critical for further steps of the analysis. Look at this cartoon that I showed in the previous lecture. I love it. Like collecting data is very expensive. We're not going to talk about that because it's not, we don't have the space to talk about that part in this class. But we're going to talk about what happens between collection data and interpreting data. And look at this. This is the flow chart of technical stages in data analysis. Okay, so you collected your data, you imported, you assure that your data is tidy, later you transform your variables or you reshape your data according to your research interest. And later what you do is to try to visualize, to use figures, to use descriptive statistics. Later you model, you make some modifications, and later you analyze and communicate. Okay, and in this class we're gonna talk a little bit about all these different stages of data analysis. For this class we're gonna focus on the import part and all the kind of data processing or data carpentry, which is importing, be sure that your data is tidy, and transform your variables. Okay. Okay, but let's try to do these preliminary steps. It is important. I encourage you, when you are watching this video, go to R and follow these steps. Don't do it later, because probably you're gonna lose part of what we're gonna do. So it's gonna be easier for you if you go step by step with me with this tutorial, okay? So the first thing is to install tidyverse if you haven't done it. And you need to use the command install packages tidyverse. Let's go to R. This is R. So just a reminder of what is R. This is our R script, and we should save this. I created in my desktop a folder for this class, and I'm gonna call this file lecture2. Okay. The file is gonna be saved as a R file. R file is a kind of what I said, like a do file, but we're gonna call it correctly. This is an R file, lecture2.r. Okay. So this is the file that we're gonna have. And in this file, I'm gonna record my coding. Okay. It is important that always that you start doing something, you set your working directory, because everything you're gonna upload or everything you're gonna produce or export from R is gonna be stored in that working directory. Okay, so it tells me that I have a problem with my working directory. So I'm gonna see where's my working directory. This is kind of review of what we did in the previous class. I'm gonna change my working directory. I don't want documents to be my working directory. I want to be in the desktop, and there's gonna be a folder. Remember that you need to change this for backslashes in order to correct this like a mistake when you are reading Windows. And the name of my folder is the name of the class. So it's POS401 Statistics. Yeah, I fixed it. Okay, so this is fixed, and now I set my working directory, and you always need to write another function that is get your working directory. So your working directory is good. So that was the first thing, right? And I need to install the tidyverse. So I use install packages, and tidyverse. So I install tidyverse. It takes time, and it's gonna show you some red lines, but at the end it's gonna show you that the package is installed in the working directory. Okay, and remember that always that you use a package, you need to call it again with the library and call tidyverse and run. And now you're gonna have tidyverse loaded in your session. Okay, save. So that's the first step that we need to do: install tidyverse. We're not gonna use for this tutorial data science labs, but it's always a good idea to install these packages. And remember that if you install this package right now, you don't need to do it again. So let's install this package. It's fine. It's called DS Labs. Again, it's gonna take time because it's downloaded. The package is already downloaded, and you call the package DS Labs. Okay. We can check these two first steps, and the final steps is that you need to go to the website of the political terror scale dataset. The political terror scale dataset is a very useful kind of information that we have about the violation of human rights by the state. Okay, but different states. I have here already opened this the website, and you need to go and download the CSV format and the DTA format. And I'm gonna talk a lot about what is the CSV, what is the DTA formats. Okay, so download both. This is important, guys, to pay attention to this part. So you download it in your computer, but in order to get R to upload these packages, you need to store these data sets. You need to save your data sets in your working directory. I'm gonna repeat it because that's gonna be important for your assignments and for your projects. And think about this more for your projects, not only for your assignments, okay? Your assignments are just the short-term goal, but your projects are the most important things. What are you gonna do with this class after you end this class, okay? So you save your information in your folder, in your working directory, and whatever you produce is gonna be stored in your working directory. There are instructions to save, to upload things from other folders and to produce things and store them in other folders, but that makes everything more complicated. If you keep everything in one folder, it's gonna be easier for you, okay? So those are the preliminaries. Okay, so remember that I showed you this flowchart of the technical stages in data analysis. We want to some extent go deeper and talk a little bit much more about different stages in this, what I call this mini cycle of data carpentry, okay? So you have data. You need to know how to load it, import it, or create it. Later, you explore this data. Once you explore this data, the next step that is crucial is that you know, like a check if your data is tidy or not. And I'm gonna explain you in this lecture what is a tidy data, why is that important. If the data is not tidy, you need to reshape it. But unfortunately for this course, it's not gonna be possible to address or to cover this topic because it's kind of difficult. But it's important that you keep in mind that sometimes data is not tidy, it's not perfect, it's messy, it's dirty, and it's problematic. And you need to learn later how to solve these kind of problems, okay? But imagine that the data is tidy. So what you do next? The next step is to clean your data. Even if the data is tidy, I'm gonna explain you what is tidy. Sometimes you have missing values, sometimes you have inconsistent categories, and so on and so forth. So you need to clean it first before you analyze it, okay? That's a required step in your data preprocessing. But there are other things that you can do with your dataset. You can subset your dataset, you can transform your variables, you can export your dataset in another format, for instance. Once you have your data pre-processed, you can analyze it, okay? And what I'm gonna do this lecture is tell you some of these steps. Again, I'm not gonna go deep in terms of reshaping data because it's more advanced and it's very kind of difficult kind of topic. And you need to try to cover that topic later in your professional development, okay? And for the next class, I'm gonna talk about transformation of variables because it is large, not large. It's a long topic to discuss and it requires more time, okay? Okay, so how do you load data in R? How do you use data in R? There are three ways, basically. The first one is to manually create the data, creating a data frame. To some extent, it's something similar to what we did the last lecture, in the sense of creating like a vectors with information that you input manually. But as you learn, sometimes it's kind of difficult, especially when you have very, very, very like a long data sets with hundreds of observations or hundreds of variables. So it's kind of difficult to do it manually. We usually use dataset that is already prepared by someone else in political science. And there are two ways to do it. One is to use a dataset that is attached to a package. And in this case, I'm going to show you the Star Wars dataset in the tidyverse. Let's go to R again. So I have the tidyverse package already loading this session. So what I'm going to do is to use this function data and call the dataset Star Wars. Okay. Which I think is a very cool kind of dataset to talk about. So you have Star Wars here. That's the only thing we're gonna do right now. Okay. Also, you can import dataset that you already downloaded in your computer, right? But before we go and explore and first import our dataset that we downloaded, which is the political terror scale. I'm sorry. I want to talk a little bit about how the datasets are. What is the format, the common format of the datasets? Datasets come in a tabular format, which is like a rectangular kind of format, and in which the columns are the variables of interest and the rows are the observations, okay? And notice that our first column is usually used to designate the unit of analysis. In this case, the unit of analysis is individuals and like a characters from Star Wars. So you can see that Anakin, the name Anakin, Amidala, Luke, and Leia are the subjects or the observations or the name of the observations of these units of analysis. Okay? This is very basic. So you're gonna encounter different types of formats of datasets. Okay? The most common way to know what kind of format do you have is what kind of delimiter this dataset uses. Like tabular data is stored in a statistical software via text files in which each line represents a row and each column is separated by the delimiter. Okay? Which are these common delimiters? For instance, this is an example of tab delimiter. This is white space delimiter. This is comma delimiter. And this is semicolon delimiter. Okay? And when you have tab delimiter or white space delimiter, the structure or the format of that data is called text, txt. Okay? How do you import a dataset with the structure txt? You have here the coding. Okay? The CSV is the comma separated kind of file. This is one of the most common types of data formats. And you also can use these delimited files, which is the third option, when you use another kind of delimiter that is not comma, semicolon, tab, or white space. For instance, in this case, it's a $sign. Let's see an example of how to upload one of these datasets. So now we're gonna use our political terror scale, okay? So how do you do it? You create an object like this one, PTS, to which I'm gonna assign the dataset, okay? So you go to your folder and you see the name of the file, in this case, the dataset. You copy the name and you write here, I'm sorry, this is read CSV. You write the name of the file. Oh, nice. It's PTS 2019 and the extension, which is CSV. And you run it and you have your PTS. Voila. Okay. So you have here your PTS, and I want to show you how to, very easy to see your data. You can go directly and open this tab with the with the data view. It is interesting that R doesn't allow you to edit directly or manually the dataset. Stata, for instance, allows you to do that, like a data editor. It gives you the option of data editor and you can change variables here. I think what R tries to prevent is that you manipulate or make up data in a way that you cannot register what you did, which might be problematic in terms of replication and transparency. And for that reason, it doesn't allow you to edit your data in this way. Okay, this is just to show you that you have PTS, you created this object that is your dataset, okay? Usually in political science, we use datasets from other softwares. For instance, in this case, Stata, SPSS, and Excel are three of the most common types of formats that we use, and these come from other statistical software. Especially Stata is very common. So it is important for you guys to learn how to import a dataset that is in a format .dta, which is the data format, the Stata format, I'm sorry. So you need to use another package. So you need to install the package foreign. And later you, again, you always call your package with the function library. Foreign. And you run. Now you have foreign and you can read a DTA kind of file. So I'm gonna call this PTS2 and PTA, and this is called, let me see, the name of the dataset is the same name, but with this extension you need to put it between quotation marks, otherwise you're gonna have problems, and DTA. Okay, so this is interesting, and I also did it intentionally to show you that you can have different datasets at the same time in a session. Of course, the more datasets you have, the more heavy is going to be the session, and probably if you have a slow computer, it's going to be problematic for you. You can decide which one of the two datasets you want to work, but they are the same, okay? Okay, I'm going to give you an advice, a tip of advice. Never use Excel. Excel has something that is called enrich files or enrich content files, and which means is that, for instance, when you use bold letters or you use something to highlight your tables in Excel, that's going to be problematic for all statistical software to read. So my suggestion is the following. If you have a dataset in Excel format, go to Excel, open it, and save it as a CSV, because CSV is a more universal kind of dataset, that format, I'm sorry, that can be used in any statistical software, including Excel, okay? Other thing, if you have in Excel different sheets with different like a datasets, one per each sheet, what I suggest you to do is to separate those files and create different tables or different datasets, okay? So this is all for importing your data.